G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the most popular players and whether or not you should follow the crowd or take them on as a bit of an anti-pod. Let's go!
Hodge has done it from nowhere. Hodge in the goal from inside the 30. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty.
The legend becomes immortal.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy, and joined once again by Luke Rogerson. Mate, we are talking popular players today.
Yeah, exciting opportunity here to talk about some players that you might want to go against the grain with.
We've talked a lot about like Team Vanilla and things like that early in the preseason, and obviously there's some reasons we do that. Obviously, it's safer with the numbers behind you, and if someone goes down, like, you're not the only one that's being hurt. But sometimes the best pod is not by starting someone who's lowly owned, but not starting someone who's highly owned. For example, last year when we interviewed the winner, Mr. Carr himself, he didn't start a Josh Dunkley last year, who ended up having not a bad season, but a disappointing season, I guess, compared to whatever everyone expected of him, and that propelled him a lot at the start of the year to a good start. So we're going to ask the question of probably the top 10 most popular players, excluding the rookies, because you got nothing to gain by going against.
I'm not fading Harley Reid. I'll put it out there.
Yeah, so we're not fading those boys, but some of these premiums and maybe some of the mid prices as well, whether or not we're going to go with them or not. Starting at number 1, the most popular premium player in the game, who also has an early buy round, Brodie Grundy. Let's talk about the arguments both for starting him and also against starting him.
Okay, well, for starting him is obviously that we see him as value. If he's the solo ruck there at Sydney, we've seen in the past what he can do as a solo ruck. Do we necessarily expect him to reach the 120 heights that he has before? No, but he doesn't. No. He doesn't need to do that to be value. So he's gone to a new club in search of that number 1 ruck role, and by all reports, he's been told he's the guy. The reason I can see it being a good opportunity potentially to go against him is because some of the other options that we have on this line. Yeah. So, if it was maybe a normal ruck season where there really
weren't
too many other value options, then maybe I'd
be a hard case to kind of say don't start Grundy.
But if you were wanting to go against Grundy and it was to go to a Gawn Jerry combo or something like that, then I certainly wouldn't be talking anyone out of that.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. It's like, okay, well, if you're not going to go Grundy, who are you going to go? Because I think Grundy's a great option. Like, I don't think you're going to be disappointed when you start Grundy. I think he is value. I think he's probably at least 20 points of value. The question is, okay, can I do better than that? Can I do better than that with a player that doesn't have an early buy round?
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is, how many of those round 5 buys do you have? Like, in the forward line, do you have a Taylor Adams? Do you have a James Jordan? Are you starting with the Nick Dacos as well, who we will talk about? There's already 3 very popular round 5 buy players. If you're adding Grundy into the mix, you've got 4 round 4 buy players. So that's a lot of points you're leaving off in that round in particular. So the Grundy reason to go against him is not necessarily for Grundy himself.
Yeah.
It's kind of, okay, well, what does your whole team mix look like, and is there a better option? And I think the 2 names we need to discuss in regards to Grundy is Gawn and someone like Tristan Sherry.
So a point that you made in our Rucks episode that I thought was good was that if you see both Gawn and Grundy as 20-point upside guys this year, then the no-brainer is to go with Gawn, because if he's a 20-point upside guy, you've effectively got a guy that you can lock in as a pick for the season. He's going to be there or thereabouts when it comes to the top 2 rucks. So I guess it depends on how you're evaluating both of those guys in terms of their upside.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to bring to everyone's attention as well is, if you're looking at those 3 options, which are probably the most popular 3 options, 2 of them have a round 12 buy in the mid-season buy.
Okay.
1 of them has a round 14. Gawn has the round 14.
Yep.
And Grundy and Tristan Xerri have the round 12. So if you're going with a Grundy-Tristan Xerri combo, you've got 2 ruckmen on the same bye round when it comes to the mid-season buys. So you're potentially leaving yourself on that round 12 bye pretty short by having both your rucks unavailable. So that is something that I think is worth mentioning as well. So
do you think either of those guys could be guys that go before their bye, or do they fit that perfect bracket for guys you'd trade on your bye? You might, your hand might be forced if you have both of them leading into that bye. You might have to say, look, I'm going to have to upgrade one of these guys early, because if you have taken both to the bye, you're going to be left in a bit of a tricky situation, aren't you?
Because it's the first bye round as well, it is also one of those awkward ones because you're not trading them into someone who's coming off their bye or anything like that. And both the Marshall and English, I think, are around 15. So they're at the very end of that mid-bye period as well. So it is a bit weird. And if you do think that both of them, like a Grundy and a Tristan Xerri, are 25, 30 points of upside, well, then you've got pretty strong belief in them. And then if that's the case, you're going to want to hold on to them for a while so their cash can build up. But there is a world where you trade them out before they buy. So, but it's just another thing to think about. Where do you stand on Grundy versus Tristan Xerri? Like if you're like me and you want to lock away Max Gawn, and you're deciding between Grundy and Tristan Xerri, what to you separates the two?
I think in a lot of ways I'm a little bit of a sucker for the seen it before.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's fair. It is fair.
Yeah. Look, I don't know whether it's always the best way to go. So I think I have a little bit more confidence in Grundy. He's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He goes Melbourne, Collingwood, bang, bang. He's going to be diving into this new season, new club.
SCG, small ground.
But then, in that huge sample size that I saw from Xerri in the half of the first quarter of the first game,
2.25 games that we got,
I was rocking a massive hard on because his points per minute were, through the roof. So, you pay a little bit more for Grundy, but maybe you get a little bit more certainty in the fact that you've seen it before. What do you think?
It's tough because I think when you're going against popular players, these are not normally the players you want to go against because there's undeniable value here. The reason you want to go against a player is because they're usually expensive and that if you don't pick them, they have a poor game, their price drops, you're going to get them cheaper. You're not going to get Grundy cheaper than this.
It's true. We all agree that these great value. It's just whether there's better value.
And I think if you're chasing better and then also fading a popular player, I think there's more likelihood that you're going to get hurt by that than it actually paying off in a meaningful way. Because you might get a little bit of a leg up where you've got an extra player playing around 5 and you get a slight edge, but the upside versus the downside favours the downside, I think, in that situation for the most part. With all that said, it will, to me, very much come down to what do we see in round 0 and what is that line and does Tristan Xerri play the preseason games with his broken face and all that sort of thing. So at this stage, I'm thinking that he's probably not one of the main ones that we wanted to fade for the sake of being an anti-pod.
Yeah.
But still one that I'm still questioning. He's not 100% a lock in my side.
Is he there currently at Mitchman, the long and short of it?
He's not there currently at the moment.
Okay,
I've got a Gawn and Xerri combo more because the cash got me to a structure that I'm playing with someone like a Carl Amon in my M6. So I'm going deep in my midfield.
Very deep.
But if I had a situation where I need that extra bit of cash and I wanted to sort of switch some things around, I could. It's going to come back to the forward line. It always going to come back to the forward line.
Weak as piss.
So, we're going to have to wait and see what goes on there. But for the sake of today's podcast, I don't think he's one that I would recommend going against for the sake of going against.
Just for the sake of it, yeah.
But just think about it. I know a lot of people just locked him away and gone, throw out the keys, he's in there. But
there's a few different scenarios where you can wheel and deal. Now, we better move on, otherwise we're going to be going all day. I'm assuming this is meant to say Nick Dacos?
Oh, yes, it is. Not his brother Josh. Nick Dacos, who was the second highest owned player in the competition at 50.3% when it comes to premiums. This, I think, is a more interesting discussion of you're fading him for the sake of differentiating your team from half the competition. Yeah,
it's a fixturing thing. The case for fading him, in a lot of people's minds is an early fixture. There's a buy in there. There's a potential Finn McGuinness tag. He's expensive. I would hazard to say that he's fully priced because we know what this guy can do. So there's, like we sat here last year with egg on our face, there's every chance that we're sitting with egg on our face. Now, in our team reveal video, Dacos hadn't trained at the Oxlogs all season.
Him in there.
Well, I dropped my R3 position, remember? So I got him in after I dropped the R3, and I had to go and have a shower after. I felt a bit yucky. I shouldn't have done it because I've been talking all pre-season about the fact that I think the wise move is to go elsewhere. So he left the Oxongs. I told him, pack your bags, son. I'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, see you after you buy, and we'll get you in.
But what do you reckon? Do you reckon it's the wise? 50%. Like, talk to me about this ownership percentage, because if I think about the echo chamber that is the people who create, like, the
it sounds like no one has
this,
it, right? Like,
well, that's what I mean. It feels like most people. So even the traders have come out and said, no to Dacos, which typically swings those
usually
ownership
moves
percentages
ownership,
because they're the big dogs. So what is the 50%? Is the 50%?
It has come down. I think he was previously ahead of Grundy as the most popular premium player. He's now behind Grundy. So I think it is slowly making its way down. The other thing is, it's still 50%. And I think a lot of the times at this stage of the year, that 50% is probably closer to sort of like 75, 80%, because there's a lot of unfinished teams out there that, just kind of logged in. And it is very difficult to actually get a gauge on what that actually means.
That to me has to be the first click factor. Like, I know we joked about that, but
I think that is a major part of why he's so highly owned, because he's the first player. You click the defense, D1. Oh, Dacos, he's a fucking gun. Let's click him. And that's as far as some of the thought process goes. But in saying that, like, some people will still look to start him because he is a gun. He is someone that hurt a lot of people last year if they didn't have him. But I still will. We've said this in the Defenders podcast. It's different this year. He's priced at 108 or whatever he is. Last year he was priced at 88. So it's a totally different scenario. So don't think of last year's pain and just carry that over to this year. I actually think that of the top end coaches, I think he's actually going to be more lowly owned than what this number represents, based on all the content that's out there of people saying not to go to Dacos.
I think that's fair as well. And I will say, caveat on all of this is that we have our opinion on this, but if somebody said, I want to start Nick Dacos, there's no way that I'm talking him out of it, because I just know that there's every chance that we have egg on our face.
100%. Like, and if he does come out and he averages 120 up to his early buy round, that's a win. Like, if you started him at 108, he's gone 12 points above that. He's a captain option for you every week. Like, that's a great pick.
If he starts like that, you'll have to find a new person to podcast with, because I shan't be showing up and sitting in this chair.
Yes, so, but I think at this stage he is someone that I'm definitely... I mean, he's never been in my team. I mean, I've not once had a structure where he's been in my side. I don't really think that there is a world that I do start him. So I guess by definition, I'm going to be fading him as a bit of an antipod. Let's talk about this other guy, because he has spent time in my team. Yep. Jack McRae. Jack Head Tilt McRae.
Yeah.
I think...
Speak about having a shower.
Yeah. This would have been maybe a more interesting conversation, or it's still definitely an interesting conversation, but the recent news of his hamstring awareness complaint, niggle, just throws another element of, just another X factor in amongst all this. So what are your thoughts on fading versus starting Jack McRae? Go on.
I'm a little bit like you in the sense that I've gone back and forth with this guy, but never have I put him in the team and felt really, really happy about it.
Yep.
Every time I've put him in, it's been I'm going to cover the field here. I'm going to make it a trading game, and I'm going to make sure I don't get burnt by the potential that we know Jack McRae has in the right role. Everything about the forward line feels a little dirty this year, especially coming off last year. So I think that at the moment I'm dead set 50-50 on McRae. I don't think you even get hurt too bad if you do choose to fade him. Like, I don't see the world where he comes out and...
So, that's the scenario we've got to kind of, like, figure is, like, what is the likelihood you think that he's going to put up an average and a score that really hurts you? Like, what does that actually look like? What score, if he goes and averages 100,
I don't feel hurt by that.
You're not too concerned about that?
I don't feel hurt by that, unless every other forward is absolute dog shit.
Which is
if he averages 100, is he going to get away from you straight away?
He's not going to soar up in price, I wouldn't have thought. So he'll still be an option if there's some toing and froing, and you can trade some, shuffle those early fix-up trades. So
I wouldn't feel hurt by 100, but I'd know that I probably need to get him in.
Yeah.
Like
105?
Now I'm starting to feel a bit yucky about that.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? Like 105, 110 is...
I think I do not see a world where he is averaging more than 105.
Okay.
I just don't see that world unless there's an injury preseason to a Libba or a Bont. Like if that's the case, then that might happen. But if their midfield is healthy, Libba, Bont, Treloar are all there round one.
Yeah.
I don't see him going 105 plus. I think he can get up to that 105 if that midfield comes up to that 50-60%.
Yeah.
But I don't see the 110 days coming back personally as currently constructed. So
are you more in the camp of... I know you said you've had him. Are you more in the camp of fading him, or are you...
He's been into my team for a lot of the season. The hamstring thing was enough for me to go, okay, I'm going to seriously explore options not having him.
Yeah, it almost made it easier in a sense, didn't it?
It was like I never felt comfortable with him sitting there, so I've gone, okay, this is my sign, like something's spoken to me going, let's try and explore other options, because I think just with the uneasiness of what's actually going to change for Macrae this season makes me want to explore other options. So
you can't sell yourself on the narrative of there's this big shift, there's this big change. I mean, people may point to the Bailey Smith thing, but I don't think that there's any.
There's every chance Riley Sanders plays more CBAs than Bailey Smith did.
It's.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's an interesting one. So
you can see by the way we're talking about it that we're 2 and
right now I'm like 60% fade, 40% go with the crowd.
Yeah.
So pretty close, but more in that fade camp. But again, we'll have to wait and see what the rest of the forward line shapes up to be. Let's talk about the next forward there, and that is Sam Flanders. How do you feel with him, and has the Macrae hamstring thing influenced this at all?
It's influenced it in the sense that you have to explore all other options thoroughly. Like it's influenced it in that sense. Bales, and we've talked about this a couple of times, has pretty much convinced me that this run is the moistest run of all time. It's
most
like
moist,
torrentially moist. This run that, and with that early buy, that I'm a little bit off it. But I will put the caveat that if in not only the practice game and then opening round, if I see this 50% CBA roll, putting in hundreds, then there's a scenario where I have to go, I want those 3 price rises before he has that buy. But premiums on buys, what do you reckon?
Well, so if you think about, if we do a little bit of math here, right? So if you expect, let's say, for example, you say Jack Macrae is going to go 90.
Yeah.
At what point is it worth copping that one round of value that Flanders is worth that? So if Flanders goes 100, so he's 10 points ahead of Macrae.
Yeah, so he gets 3 lots of the 100, which is
3 lots of the 100. So
Macrae's 4 lots of 90 is already 360.
So and if you change it between a premium and a rookie that's going to fill in, so say you're giving up 100 points and you're going to cop 60 instead.
Yeah.
So there's 40 points. So 4 rounds of being 10 points ahead. I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore. I've lost myself. I've lost my train of thought. But
mathematicians. The Ball Boys get math.
But I'll have to think of this a bit better. But
I know what you're talking about.
There's a cutoff where he's X amount points better that the loss of that round is worthwhile.
There's people
that completely.
There's people out there that have articulated better than us. We'll bring an abacus in next. We'll bring an abacus in. We'll
scientific calculator.
Correct. Cos tan. E equals MC squared.
Yeah, I reckon if he goes 100 and Macrae goes 90, that to me is like you cop that at that point.
You probably take Macrae, hey?
I think I take Flanders because he's 10 points better.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's worth it. But at the end of the day, how confident are you at doing that? It's up in the air. But it is a massive watch. I'm still probably fading both of them, to be honest, at this stage, and trying to hunt those even cheaper guys.
Does it? You end up with a forward line full of mid prices. Is that okay to do that? I guess you get your big dogs elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it just means your other lines.
It's true. We have to look at it from more of a positionless aspect when we get into a situation like this. It's okay. Well, we've got 6 mid prices in our forward line. Well, that's all right because we've got the premiums in other lines.
Yeah.
So
the other thing is, I'll throw it to finish the Flanders thing. And we talked about what does a Macrae have to do to hurt you? What does a Flanders have to do to hurt you? And is that more likely to happen? Because I am more the world I see Flanders going 110 is much more realistic to me than a McRae going 110.
Yeah.
So I think there's a higher likelihood that Flanders hurts you more than a McRae if you fade one of the two.
Think about what we saw from him on like 30% CBAs at the end of last year.
Massive,
It's insane. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so I think that just weighs on my mind a little bit, is that like I'd be more concerned going against a Flanders than I would a McRae.
Yeah, that you might get
It's
killed.
just that buy round, where is that enough to offset that? So that's just something I think
Beautiful.
about there. Let's move away from these stinking forwards and let's talk about a guy that I think this will be really short and sweet. Hayden Young, one of the highest owned defenders. I think he's the highest owned defender.
No
Are
math
we fading
required
him?
here, mate. No math required. 1 + 1 = midfield time.
Don't go against Hayden Young. You are not going to win out. This man...
I'm going with Hayden Young. You could
Yes.
you could go against Hayden Young. There's guys in that price bracket that people might like better. You know, Wanganeen Miller is there.
A little bit more, yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
no, I think this is the price bracket where you've got nothing to lose by starting him and going with the crowd.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot to lose if you go against the crowd and he
goes
does go
really well.
100, 105.
There's
You're not gaining much by fading him, I don't think. He's not super expensive.
This is like the proper stereotype of what you want. Is a guy that's
This is what Nick Dacos was last year. Like, this is why we shouldn't have faded him last year.
we can't compare Nick Dacos to Hayden Young.
Yeah, but midfield time, Luke. Midfield time.
Midfield time. Yep. Lock it in.
I think so. Max Gawn is the next one here. So he is he the next highest owned ruckman? I believe he is. So Grundy is by far and away. Max Gawn is next. I think if I just pull up his ownership, he is sitting at 31% ownership, which is fairly high. Do you think a lot of people are rocking with the Grundy-Jerry combo? If you are one of those teams, are you nervous about going against Max Gawn and fading him as someone who's going to be fairly popular?
How much do you think you lose out if you pick, let's say you pick Grundy, you don't pick Gawn, and they both end up with 25 points of upside? How much of a loss is that if you picked Grundy instead of Gawn?
The difference
you still got the upside.
The difference is you now have to make a trade.
Yeah.
And you're not getting a captain versus those people with Gawn are getting a captain option. So if they come up with a brilliant matchup, Gawn goes 160.
Yeah.
They've got the captaincy on them. You don't have him at all. That hurts. Like, that's something that stings a lot. I think the captaincy is a legit thing to be nervous about. Like, put it this way.
Yeah.
Last year, Rowan Marshall was priced at 91 or something like that. He went 116.
Yeah.
If you went against Rowan Marshall last year, now I know we've got more options this year.
Yeah.
But if you went against Rowan Marshall last year, think about how much that hurt.
Yeah, you were in a pickle.
Like, no one in the top 100 didn't have Rowan Marshall. Like, everyone had him. Gawn has every chance to be that pick this season.
Is there a way that you skirt that downside by whatever you don't spend on Gawn that you get Grundy for? If you turn that into points elsewhere, do you think you can skirt that loss?
Absolutely. Like, it depends on your conviction level of what you're spending that money on. Like, are you is that confidence in the other player as strong as the confidence you have in Gawn?
Yeah.
That would be the question I would be asking myself. And it is a little bit different because obviously, like, Tristan Jerry, Brady Grundy are both great options. They're both going to exceed their price, I believe, by a fair bit. But I also think Max will do that as well. So
you're more likely to go against Grundy than you are against Gawn?
I think so. I think so. I think there's more of a world where Gawn comes out and just hammers in some big scores early on.
Yeah. And
it's going to make him so hard to get in, and he's also captained by a few sides. Whereas I don't know if people are throwing the captaincy on a Grundy early season.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts. But so for me, I don't know. Maybe, and I wrote a Deca DT article on Max Gawn recently. If you haven't, that'll be coming out tomorrow when this podcast is recorded. So go and check that one out. Spoiler alert: I've given him the ace tag because I think he is someone that he just picks himself to me. So I wouldn't advocate going against him, but I know some people are because of the other options available. But for me personally, the more I research Max Gawn, the more I am terrified to go against him.
Sam Walsh, I'm going against. The early buy does it for me.
Fading him, yeah. He's one of those guys that is cheap, so you're not necessarily fading him because he's expensive, but he isn't like he's not priced in the 80s or 70s like
I don't think he's going to fly away from he's not going to get away from you something chronic.
in the first couple of rounds.
He also has, I mean, I know he's got Richmond in round 1, but he's got Brisbane at the Gabba in round 0. So you can't, I'd be pretty shocked if he came out and gave us a 140 or something.
There's also other options.
Yes.
There's other options to go. Like if you were going head to head with a Sam Walsh and you choose a Jack Steele, I'm very comfortable with that. Do you know what I mean? Like going against someone who's got equal upside, done it before, no early buy around. I'm comfortable with that. Like I think it's all about the other options as well, like who you're going with. And I think that in the midfield, there are several. So I agree with you that going against Sam Walsh, who again, he's pretty highly owned up there. He is sitting at the moment at 27% ownership in the competition. I'm pretty happy to let, basically a quarter of the comp have to deal with him in round 2, and maybe we'll get a jump up in that second round.
Talk to me about Bont. If you don't own him to start, is there a chance you never own him?
Maybe. So he's 26.5% owned as well. And this was last year, if we go back to Rory Laird discussions. Now, if you and I both faded Rory Laird, and it never really felt like I wasn't really ever nervous about it. I mean, that second week where he popped that 140, that stung a little bit, but we eventually got him in. Yeah. And I think that's a question about a lot of these players, that if you're not starting with them, how are you getting them in? How are you getting Bonds? How are you getting a Nick Dacos and that sort of thing? And that's a big question people will have if you're not going with these guys. When do you get them in? My thought process is don't worry about it. Figure it out at some point. Elsewhere. So many things can happen between now and the buy rounds and that sort of thing.
We wouldn't have had English last year.
English, we didn't have him. An injury goes down, we trade him over. A lot of people didn't start Dacos like you and I. Doherty goes down, you trade across, and that's it. So I wouldn't stress too much about, if I plan to get him in at this round, at this stage, so much is going to change between now and then. So I'm not stressing about that. There's a very real possibility you don't have these guys until the mid-season buys where you do have those 2 downs, 1 ups. That's just going to how you have to play it. They haven't come down at value, and I think if you're patient enough, you'll get there.
Yep.
So I think just don't stress too much about getting these guys in if they're not value right now. Let's talk about another cheaper player, Kadeen Coleman, who is still very high up there in ownership at 27% there as well. I think this one's a pretty easy fade for me. I just don't see the Kadeen Coleman fantasy hype, personally.
Yeah, there's a couple of factors. I mean, the grand final performance is just absolutely fantastic. If he comes and plays that role with that intensity every week, then it's an absolute smash pick. But I just don't feel like week to week his thirst is the word I'm going for. Is there? And then the other thing that you mentioned or have mentioned before as well is that Brisbane maybe don't have that particularly friendly roll-off halfback that we see in some other teams. I don't know whether it's the fact they play a lot of their home games at the Gabba, it's a slightly different shape or what it is. But when you go back and look at Kitty Coleman's stats across the year last year, there's actually not a lot to be excited about. There's only a few times he went over 90, and if you're wanting to pick a guy for that upside, you probably want to see that he can do that as a pretty regular occurrence. I'm just not sure he's there yet, but
if we compare him to the guy that he's kind of replacing, Daniel Rich only went above 90 once in his entire career, and that was in 2021, where he did do a 98, but that to me sticks out as a bit more of an anomaly than the rule. So in terms of Brisbane and their, the fantasy friendly role nature of that halfback position, short ground, they don't chip it around, they're very direct. I think they're the best clearance team in the competition, so it's not down there very often either. I don't see the need to take that risk when he's got a round 2 bye. You can sort of get him after the bye if you really want him, but I don't think you need to launch into it in that first round of the season, personally.
We both agree we'd go fade on that one.
Taylor Adams is an interesting one because this, again, ties back into that forward line conversation, but he is popular. Again, I'll throw the question that I asked you about the McRae and Flanders discussion. What does he go that hurts you if you don't start him, that you're regretting it? Because he's a bit later, the round 5 bye, priced at 76.5. What does he go at that stings? Is it 95?
I think it is 95. It's 95 there, thereabouts, or the 100. There's every chance with him that if I see in round 0 and the preseason game that he's their 85% CBA guy, and it looks absolutely solid that I go there.
95 to 100, yeah.
The little wrinkle I think which is interesting if you were to go against him as an antipod is the age and the potential injury concern as well, because that is like a wet dream. If you pick if you don't pick one of these antipods and they go down injured, you're like,
hell yeah, you're soaring up the ranking.
Absolutely.
Everyone else has got to deal with the trade. You don't have to. You can jump on the next guy that's popping.
So I mean, there's that, but we don't plan for injuries. But he's got a little history there.
He's not someone that you just sweeping that under the rug, I think. Is there a world you fade all three of these guys?
So all three of those big forwards,
Flanders, Adams,
I almost
McRae.
talked myself into it before when I said look at it as a whole team perspective. Don't look at the lines in isolation, because does it? I mean, I'm sure there is. I haven't given this a great deal of thought, but does it really matter so much where?
See, I don't think so. I don't think it's like last year. The value was in the forward line, so we loaded up on the forward line.
Yeah.
The value is not in the forward line at the moment, as far as we can see. So don't spend your money there, because it's.
So are we
it's
reaching for something that we shouldn't be? Should we just be saying, well, if we don't rate the pick, and all our research says that we shouldn't rate the pick, don't make the pick?
That's my thought process at the moment as well. I do think that there is a world where Tyler Adams can come out and score 95 to 100 if he is that dominant sort of number 1 or 2 guy in the midfield. I don't necessarily see that happening, but we will have a chance to look at it in opening round to get a gauge on whether or not that's the case. So
the only certainty is that we are going to talk ourselves in circles for the next few weeks.
The fucking
That's
forward line. The forward line. Anyway, but
yucky.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of those popular players, and I think the opening round stuff lends itself to going against some of these popular guys. The ones that are up there, I think, that don't talk yourself into going against are the players like a Max Gawn, a Hayden Young, are probably the 2 guys that stand out to me the most. Grundy is probably the next one that is the more difficult one to talk yourself into going against. The rest, though, there are pretty strong arguments to going against a lot of these players because of either their price, their early buys, or the fact that we haven't seen them do what we need them to do yet. And there are ways that you can come out ahead if you don't have them, and a lot of people do. So, yeah, lots to talk about, lots to discuss between now and opening rounds. Let us know what you think down below. Is there a popular player that you are going against, or is there someone that you are terrified to go against in your starting fantasy squad? Drop them down in the comments if you can so as well, guys. Make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel and the wherever you get your podcast. Give us a 5-star rating and review. Thumb this video up, and we will see you guys next time with a couple of interviews with some fantasy legends. Bye!